Now, y'all mentioned maybe wanting to look at other groups within Christianity, denominations or groups. I mean, is that something you're really interested in?
Yeah, because I'd like to know what the difference is between them.
Okay, well, we could certainly do that. Let me suggest, when we finish this, we'll finish this in 2 weeks, that we pick up something moving towards Easter.
Okay.
And then we'll do after Easter, we can do that. So if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Dan is sick. Dan has the flu. So he's not here, and I know that Linda has a hard time getting out with the snow. She gets snowed in easily. Mm-hmm. So
it's drifting down there bad.
Yeah, I'm assuming it is. Shouldn't be a problem next week because it may be gone. It'll be in the 50s for crying out loud. So, okay, we're looking. We've looked at Christianity. We've looked at Judaism. We've looked at Islam. And when you look at those three religions, what are some of the things they have in common? What are some of the things that those three have? Okay, you got they're monotheistic.
Yeah, they
so,
don't have three. They don't have the triune.
That's right. And now we would say we're monotheistic. We're one God, but they wouldn't. But we would. So we would say that we kind of come together on the idea of God. There is one supreme God. Okay, overall. And so that's one thing. What else would they all three have in common?
They have like a sacred text or
something
that's been carried on throughout the years.
And how do they tend to view their sacred text? Whether it's the Christians and it's the Bible, and it's interesting because the Greek word for book is biblos. So the Bible is the book, and it is the book. It's not a book, it is the book for Christians. So how would Christians view the Bible, tend to view the Bible? Sacred text, how is sacred text?
Inspired.
Yeah, okay, it's inspired by God. How would Jews view the Torah and the writings and the prophets, their sacred writing?
That's their number one.
Yeah, that's their number one. It's inspired too from God. And the Quran.
No, that's the ultimate.
Yeah, that's kind of you don't even translate it because you read it in the language. So in these three religions, you've got one God, you've got one sacred text, and you've got certain ways to relate to that one God, either through Jesus Christ or through obedience to the law or through following the teachings of the Quran. All of those are ways to relate to the one God. And for those three religions, you really can't be two of them. You can't be two out of three. You can't be a Muslim Christian, because to be a Christian, even though Jesus is in the Quran, Jesus is a prophet in Islam, he's not the incarnate God. So for you to be a Christian Muslim, you'd have to say Jesus isn't God, and when you said Jesus isn't the incarnation of God, you're no longer a Christian anymore. And the same thing with Judaism. You can't say Jesus is God in human flesh and stay a Jew, because Jews don't believe God comes in human flesh. You could see him as the Messiah, the Christos, but not God, which is sort of essential for Christians. Okay, so all of these three are related to one another. I also tend to be very aggressive in making converts, because if your future is based on how you relate to the one God, man, you want other people, if you care about the people around you, you want them to know how to relate to God, because if you get it right, you're good. If you get it wrong, you ain't so good. All right, now, I mention all of that because we're going to be looking at the next 3 weeks, including today. We're looking at religions that are very, very different, that have a different concept of God and a different idea about how to relate to God. Okay, and so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight, starting with Hinduism, and Hinduism is the oldest. Now, when you think about perceptions of Hindus, what a Hindu is, or, like we did with Islam and like we did with Judaism, Christianity, the idea of, now, what is happening in this top picture, the picture over to the left or to the right?
Well, I can't tell if that's a god that they're worshiping or if it's a leader who's teaching.
What does it look like?
Both.
Well, it looks like a
He
little
kind of
bit.
looks bigger than a human.
Well, actually, that's kind of a teacher teaching, a group of people. But you're right, it could be a statue and they're kind of worshiping it. Here's a guy, and he is considered the sexiest man in India. Movie star.
I'm not touching that.
No, well, nor would you want to touch him. But what is he doing, or what are they doing? We'll talk about this in a little bit. What does it look like they're doing?
Gonna hold them underwater.
They're going underwater, yeah, like they're going to hold him underwater for wearing a Speedo when he could have worn something else.
A towel.
Yeah, could have worn like the other ones. Nobody else is dressed like him.
Like a baptism.
Yeah, kind of. Only they're doing it not in a tank, they're doing it in the Ganges, which is part of Hinduism, or part of Hinduism, not all Hindus. And this is just an Indian businessman, and I included that because Hinduism is the dominant religion in India, and there's a lot of business going on in India. So it's when you compare the three pictures, you get
And they own all the hotels in the United States.
and filling stations.
Well, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So, and if you want your computer fixed, you're probably going to talk to him.
Yep.
There's every. It's interesting with this guy, business person. I took a class when I was teaching school to get my license, because you had to get your license renewed. And you could take, my license allowed me to take any class I wanted. I didn't have to do it in the field. It just had to be a college level class. And I had to take one every 3 years or something like that. And so I took a class on using Microsoft, the Office stuff. And a person from a junior college came over and taught. And she was an American citizen born in India. And she had 3 PhDs, 3 of them. Wow. 3 of them. And she was saying one of the things that concerned her as an American citizen, because this was now her country, not India, that when she compared the United States, and this is back, I'm thinking 2005, so a long time ago, when she compared the United States with India, she said that what concerns her is that in the United States, we take classes like I was attending on how to use software. In India, they teach classes on how to write software. And she was concerned that eventually the ones who write it are going to be controlling the ones who use it.
Yeah.
And she said that was a big concern of the way we teach our educational system, is using things that are produced by other people. And I thought, whoa, that's kind of interesting. So anyway, that's certainly part of, India isn't primitive, of course. It's as modern as any other place. Okay, we're going to talk, we're going to talk about the little bit of history and basic beliefs, how they relate to other religions and how Hinduism relates to other religions. But we're going to go through the history pretty quickly, because I think what they believe is more important, and certainly more important as you deal with Hindus at the hospital, which you're going to see, or on a telephone call, as we encounter Hindus, or at the airport, which is also a possibility. So the history is less important, but is important in that it develops the story. Now, if you're talking about the history of Hinduism, and we're talking about not the political state of India, but the religion Hindu, there's a prehistory. Now, what would that mean? What would be a prehistory?
Before it was recorded?
Okay, history before it was recorded. For instance, what would be some prehistory for, well, at least when it was recorded, it was looking back. The people who wrote it down were envisioning a time in the past. What would be for Christians? What would be something comparable to a prehistory?
The Old Testament?
Okay, all of the Old Testament, probably not, because David and
Right.
but if you start, what's that?
In the beginning.
In the beginning, yeah, all of that would be a prehistory because nobody was there writing it, right? And so there's a prehistory. Now, the fact that prehistory is so very important to them, what does that show about, what might that show about the Indian religion? If prehistory is really, really important.
It's old. It's
Yeah.
not a new wave thing, it's
old, has deep roots, developed. That's a mountain on which the Lord Shiva, and we'll talk about Shiva in a little bit, the destroyer, one of the devas. That's where she's supposed to live. Beside her is Shiva, which is a female goddess. And what's really interesting is, do you notice a pattern on those things? What's the pattern? It's a swastika. So early Hindus were Nazis.
absolutely. Or the Nazis are Hindu.
Yeah, the Nazis, the swastika for Hindus was a symbol of life. That actually was a positive symbol. You see in Hindu temples swastikas all over the place because it was a symbol of life and prosperity and goodness. And that's why the Nazis adopted it as their symbol. Because it was a positive symbol for Hindus. Culturally, it was a positive one. It's become negative because of the Nazis. Yeah, the Nazis kind of screwed up the swastika. But, okay, so we've got a prehistory. Early people, before people are writing it down. Now, as the religion and a prehistory starts to develop, what would be some important things that we would expect to see within a religion during its earliest stages? Any religion.
Good storyteller.
Okay, you're going to see collections of stories, like we see in Christianity and Judaism, the stories in Genesis, these wonderful, rich stories that convey certain truths, right? Now, the early Hindus in India are agricultural societies centered around river systems, like the Ganges and the Indus. Just like in Egypt, they're centered around the Nile, and in China, the Yangtze. These are these river civilizations. Now, if you've got a civilization that's centered on rivers, what would you expect them to do as a society? What would their economy be based on if they're centered on rivers?
Trading, merchandise.
Okay, you got trading. Why trading?
Well, it'd be easier to move it.
Okay, you can move it down rivers. What are they going to be trading if they are in a river valley, as opposed to like the Jewish people in their prehistory? They weren't in river valleys. So their perception of God, the God that they worshipped, was a God that was appropriate for people who weren't in river valleys. They're herders. The God is the one who leads people who have flocks, animals. What do you think in river valleys? What do you think people What's the advantage of living in a river valley?
You can import, export.
Well, you can import, export. What are you exporting in particular?
Well, I know in India, they sell a lot of jewelry and linens, garments.
True. Okay, good.
Carvings.
Think about linen. What are people? Why would people tend to settle in a river valley? What does a river valley have that plains don't have?
Water.
It has water. And if you're living in a place with water, what are you going to start doing that would be more difficult to do on plains?
Have rice.
Okay, good. You have rice. What else are you going to have? You're going to grow stuff, right? Because you're going to have water to grow. That's why these civilizations develop around river valleys, because there's water. There's access to water. You know, if you're not, like the Jews, they've got to move. You know, find still water because it's not there. If you're in a river, if you're in Egypt, you don't have to find water. The water is there. And so if you've got a religions developing around river valleys, what are some of the things that are going to be really important for your gods to do?
Provide rain.
You're going to want your gods to provide rain, right? Okay? Because you're growing crops. Now there's a lot of advantages to growing crops. Once you start growing crops, you settle down, right? You've got a predictable diet. All of a sudden, if you settle down, you're not moving. And if you're settled in one place, you can sort of focus populations. You know, it's something that you can't do if you're moving around like the American Indians in the West. You know, you don't build cities if you're chasing buffalo herds. You know, but you do build cities if you're farming in a river valley. Because you can trade, you can produce things that would be good for farming. Okay, so you're gonna want to pray to gods that are going to deal with rain, natural things. What else becomes important, really important, if you're settled in river valleys and farming?
Like the ability to fish, what do you mean?
Okay, fish, so you got these natural things. How do you want the soil? You want the soil to...
Fertile.
You want the soil to be fertile. So you've got a lot of these religious ideas, stories, focused on things like rain and natural cycles and fertility, particularly the fertility of the soil, growing up in India. So that becomes sort of a foundation in Hinduism. In Hinduism, there's what's called a Vedic period when people start writing things down. So you end up developing sacred texts like the Upanishad in Sanskrit, the language of India. And if you're writing things down, still you don't have paper. They're not writing it on paper. You need then teachers that are going to convey it to the people. Okay? So as they start writing stories about this ancient time and how to relate to these gods that would take care of them, you're standardizing the stories, you're putting them down, you're now teaching them practices and such. Okay. Now, in ancient India, it's becoming even more settled. As the society develops, you can start developing temples, you can start developing political systems. And this was a Hindu empire, the Gupta Empire, so right about the time Islam is forming in Arabia. Okay, so politically they're unifying, they're doing what ancient people do. As they become more prosperous and successful, they're coming together. In the Middle Ages, you've got a continuation of the standardization of what Hinduism, we're going to talk about that in a minute, Hinduism believes. You also have something else really interesting, and it'll become more important as we look at the Hindu beliefs. Some of the Hindus' beliefs is if you look at India, what is going on to the west of India? If you have India, this is where the Hindus are. One, Hinduism ends up spreading east through trading. So as they sort of standardize, spread. That's why in the middle of Indonesia, you've got an island called Bali. And Bali is Hindu. And this, surrounded by Islam, but Bali is Hindu, because Hinduism spreads, ends up spreading east. But right to the west of India, even if you close your eyes and look at a modern map, what is due west of India? What peoples are west of India?
I'm gonna guess Africa.
Well, Africa is west, not quite so far west. If you look at India, Hindu civilization, developing in India, deep roots. If you move just across the Indus River from India, you've got Persia. And west of Persia is Arabia. Now, last week we talked about something that happened in Persia. Who ends up, or what group ends up taking power in Persia?
Pakistan.
Yeah, Pakistan, good. You got Pakistan. What religion is Pakistan? In fact, Pakistan's a country only because of this religion. Why it's not part, it was part of British India. But when British India got its independence, Pakistan was separated as a separate country. What's the religion of Pakistan? Do you happen to know? It's the same religion as Persia, Iran. It's the same religion as Islam. So we've got this Hindu civilization butted up against Islam. And when Islam starts to spread in the 7th century, remember, it spreads rapidly and it spreads militarily. They conquer a lot of territory, a lot North Africa, a lot from the Byzantines that are in Palestine. They end up conquering Persia. Now, if that would show something about Islam. It tends to be aggressive, or at least it was then, seeking to spread the word of God. They're butting it up against India. One of the things you end up seeing in the 10th century is you start seeing Islam, and you know this is a mosque because it has the minarets around it. You start seeing Islam moving into India, from Persia. So you end up with a major, in fact, the influence is going to be so great that eventually a Hindu India is going to cease to exist. It's going to become a Muslim India, or better, a Mughal India. And Mughal India, we're talking about somewhere around the 14th century, 14th century, 15th century. India was conquered by the Muslims, but it wasn't conquered by the Arabs. Have you ever heard of a guy named Genghis Khan?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You remember what Genghis Khan did? He built the largest empire the world had ever seen. He was Mongolian and conquered China and conquered big piece of Russia, conquered a lot of the Middle East. Genghis Khan and his Mongols conquered a lot of territory. In the East, China, they tended to adopt Chinese customs. In the West, they converted to Islam. And so not only did you have the Persians and the Arabs pushing India from the West, you had the Mongols pushing from the North. They end up conquering India, And so India becomes ruled by Muslims. The Mughal India, Mughal was the name of the Mongols who ended up settling in India, and they built a Muslim culture in India. The rulers are Muslim, but the people are Hindu. And we're going to talk about why that would be possible. It wasn't possible in the Middle East, but it was possible in India. So the people are Hindu, but the rulers are Muslim, and that's why the Taj Mahal has minarets. You know, it's a mosque, you know, even though it's what's associated with India. Okay. And a lot of what we would consider Indian art is really art influenced by Islam. Okay. Early modern period, the Muslims end up moving in, conquering, ruling India for a couple of centuries. But there's another group that moves into India that ends up doing something very similar to what the Muslims, the Mongols, the Mughals did. And it's Europeans, right? In fact, what European power ends up really controlling India? Do you know what European power controls? In fact, they called India the jewel in the crown. Britain, the British end up controlling India. Now, why would the British, and this is a Portuguese, this is a Portuguese building in a place called Goa. Why would the Europeans be interested in India? Because the British move in, the French move in, the Portuguese move in, the Dutch are all having a piece of India. Why would Europeans become interested in India? Why would that be something that the Europeans would want?
Trade.
Okay, good, trade. What are they looking to get from India? Why would India be a place where Europeans would love to trade?
Their textiles. Their textiles.
Okay, whose textiles?
Indians in there.
What's really interesting, if you're trading, and let's say you got a place that grows cotton,
Yeah.
grows a lot of cotton, and you got another place that turns cotton into LL Bean shirts. You got one place that's growing cotton. Now, those two places want to trade with one another, right? Mm-hmm. Because one has the cotton and one has the shirts, right? In this deal, as they trade, who is probably going to come out ahead? The one that's growing the raw material or the ones that's processing it into manufactured goods?
I would think the manufacturer.
Manufacturer. Why is the manufacturer going to make the money?
Because they can set their price whatever they want, whereas buying it raw from the farmer's going to be, this is what we pay.
Bango. That's exactly right. The people with the technology are going to make the money. The manufacturer's going to make the money. And so European powers like Britain, like the Dutch, like the French, like the Portuguese, like the Spanish, they're producing things, right? And they look at India, and India has a lot of people, right? Mm-hmm. And as the British, with all their manufacturing, textile manufacturing, as they close their eyes, what do they see? How do they envision the Indian population? The 1 billion people that are there? When a British textile manufacturer closes his eyes, how does he see the Indian people?
Poor.
They see him as poor, also see him as
Farmers.
wearing British shirts, wearing LL Bean shirts, right? Because you could sell every Indian an LL Bean shirt, LL Bean's going to, boom, going to make a ton of money, right? Okay, so you've got these European, you also have spices, that was a big deal at one time, getting spices from the East. India is a good place sort of in between. So India has an enormous market. They have raw materials because they're growing cotton like crazy in India, especially if the Europeans encourage them to do it because they're going to buy it so they could sell them shirts. When the Europeans move in to India for economic reasons, what are they bringing with them? They're certainly bringing with them the money, right? What else? And their shirts. What else are they bringing with them?
Families, I don't know.
What's that?
Families?
Okay, bringing with them families. Now, if you're bringing your family, what do you want? I'm going to locate my family in India. Okay. What do I want for my family in
Security.
India? I want security. Therefore, I'm going to move in what? What do I need if I want my family to be secure?
Folks.
Guards,
What's that?
guards.
I'm going to need guards, right? Works out well. Manufacturing countries produce a lot of weapons because they got factories to do it. So you're going to want guards. You're going to want protection. What else? Now, if I'm raising my kids in India and I'm a British person, I want my children to grow up. Do I want them to grow up like Indians? Probably not. I'm European, and I may not be there forever. I may be going home. So how do I want them to be raised?
Educated.
I want them to be educated, right? How do I want them to be educated? Because India has schools. There are Hindu schools teaching Hindu beliefs, Hindu ideas. Do I send my kids to a Hindu school?
No.
No, I'm not going to do that. Where am I going to send them to school?
I'd say Catholic.
I'm going to send them to Catholic school, right? Ooh, the problem though.
You got the Catholic faith there being pushed out the.
You gotta have the faith in there, right? So all of a sudden, not only because those poor Indians are going to hell, right? Unless we convert them, because that's what a lot of missionaries believe. I've got to convert these people. And now that we've got a toehold into India, now we can move in. But as Europeans become more settled, although they aren't really colonizing India, but they're certainly controlling it financially, they're certainly going to bring their religion. Not only for the kids, but for themselves. What am I going to do on Sunday morning in India and Calcutta if I don't have a church? So I'm going to bring Christianity into India. So from one side, from the west and from the north, you have the Islam moving into India, right? And you've got Christianity coming all along the coast as the Europeans are starting to trade. So you end up with India being influenced by both Islam and Christianity. Muslims ruled, Christians ruled at different times. The way the British ruled was kind of interesting because they ruled through what they called Rajas. And remember we talked about, when we were looking at Acts, one of the things the Roman government just figured out, that it was cheaper if you let little groups of people who live in countries rule themselves. Is cheaper as long as they're paying taxes or buying shirts, because then you don't have to pay for police, and then you don't have to pay to collect the garbage, and then you don't have to pay to run the hospitals and stuff. They can pay for that. The Rajas can pay for that. We just collect the taxes and we just dump cheap manufacturing goods onto them and take out raw materials. So that's the way the British maintain, because you think about little tiny Britain, in the 1800s with 20 million people. How are they ruling India that has like 600 million people? How does 40, and India is just one piece of their empire. Well, they do it because they rule through Rajas that are sort of on the British payroll. So most of British India isn't ruled directly by the British, it's ruled by Indian rulers that are working for the British. That's the exact same way the Romans governed their empire. Okay. Contemporary Hinduism, if you look at a map of where Hindu is a major influence, where on the map is the color darkest?
It's all in India.
Yeah, it's all in
South
India,
America.
right? But it's kind of interesting. And we'd expect India to be really dark red. What's interesting though is, one, you got a little island groups in the Pacific, in the Indian Ocean that's dark. How might they have become Hindu? Why in the middle of the Indian Ocean are there little islands where Hinduism is important? Now think about it. What would the people in India be doing?
Well, they'd be trading.
They'd be trading, right? And just like the British traded and planted Christianity in India, Indians earlier, when they were dominant, were trading and planting Hinduism in other places. Something else that's kind of interesting is if you look at South America, right here, you've got two places that are red. In a world of, most of the world is 0 to 10% Hindu. And yet, right there in Guyana and Suriname, you end up with a darker red. Why? Why do you think those two places in South America have a larger proportion of Hindu population than the rest of the Americas?
There was a port for trading.
Okay, that's right. Not so much for trading, but what the British did, because the British ruled Guyana, what they did to get labor is they transported, and the Dutch in Suriname, transported Indians, Hindus, for labor, particularly after slavery was abolished. Because you needed people still to work the fields. And so what they did when slavery was abolished, what they did was they brought in people from India to work, and the people from India brought their Hinduism. Okay. So
it's
little
kind of
bit-
immigration there then?
yes, it's immigration, but kind of a forced immigration. You know, the people that were brought over didn't say, gee, I want to go to Suriname. They were kind of transported, but they weren't slaves. So they ended up, since they're not slaves, they also settled and sort of established their own communities, which is really interesting. Okay, concept of God. And I've got, different pictures of up there. Krishna and Shiva and we'll talk about those in a little bit. I want to really focus on that picture. What's going on in that picture? What does that appear to be?
Like a water fountain?
Looks like water, right? And what is above the water?
Well, aren't they ripples from like incoming vibrations?
Sure. And what's causing the ripple? It's a drop. And if you want to think about how the Hindus visualize God, that's the way to do it. God is like an ocean. And we become just drops in this ocean. God for the Hindus is not a personal, isn't personal in any way. It's called the Brahmanian. It's kind of, it's not even like sort of like the Force, in Star Wars. It's what is other than us. In fact, for Hindus, you can have almost any view of God you want. Hindus don't have any centralized view of God. This is God. Now, if you go to a Christian, does a Christian have a concept of God? You bet. To a Jew? You bet. To a Muslim? You bet. To a Hindu, no. God is just what is out there. In fact, you could question God. You could be an agnostic in a Hindu and question whether God is there. You can be a Christian. You know, a Hindu would say you could be a Christian. Christian Hindu. Because whatever enables you to relate to that which is out there, that force that is out there. If it's Jesus Christ, good. If it's Moses, good. If it's a chair, that's fine. Whatever causes you to relate to what is out there, this force that is out there, that permeates creation, that's what you want to relate to. Now, if that's my perception of God, it is purely up to the individual. What are the implications of me seeing God like that, as opposed to a God that's more personal and directly related to me? What would be the implications of seeing God as an ocean in which we join by just being drops? What would be the implications?
Well, it'd be hard to get other people to come to your way of thinking, I would think.
Okay, would be challenging to get other people to come to. Why do you think it would be that would be difficult?
Because it's so vague.
Right, okay. So the fact that it's vague would make it challenging to really relate to it, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we certainly think, because our perception of God is so focused. Good, great word. Our perception is so focused. For the Hindus, it's not focused at all. And I think I told you one of the things, and we'll see a picture of Gandhi a little later, one of the things I told you last week is when Gandhi, a good Hindu, said, today I am a Christian, today I am a Muslim, today I am a Jew, he meant it. Because he believed all of those could be passed to relate to the Brahmanian, this force that is out there, that is present. In fact, it's a force that we want to unite. The goal is kind of to unite to this vague and indistinct force that we really can't define. We can't fully understand because it is so separate from us. Therefore, to understand it, what is that force going to need to do? If we are going to understand this indistinct reality, what's that reality going to need to do for us?
Give us some kind of purpose.
It's going to have to give us some kind of purpose, right? We're going to have to know, how would it do that? I mean, this vague force that's out there that you can believe or not, or you can visualize any way you want, or you can question, it really doesn't matter, it can be in everything, it could be in nothing, it is just out there, up there, out there. In order for that to give us purpose and direction, what is it going to need to do? What would it need to do? If this is what I believe, what is that reality going to need to do for me to ever get to a purpose?
To be symbolic?
Okay, I'm going to have to, it's going to have to put symbols, give me symbols, right? It's going to have to be symbolic. I'm going to need to find some way to understand it. Therefore, that force that's out there is going to have to help me reach it, right? Because I'm never going to understand it without some help, right? And that's what Hindus believed are done by devas and avatars. Devas and avatars. And that's Krishna. And Krishna is an avatar. Now, Hindus believe that this is this indistinct force that you can think of in a lot of different ways because it is completely other than us. this force relates to us through two means. One is through devas. And for Hindu, devas are, you could call them gods, but you almost have to put a quotation marks around it. Because these are the forces of nature. These are natural forces. You know, they call them the shining ones. Like fire. What would be other forces of nature?
Wind.
Wind. Force of nature is wind. What else would be a force of nature?
Rain.
Rain. Yeah. These
Snow.
these are devas that they personify. They create ways to relate to. How do I relate to, fire, wind, rain? Good gracious, how do I relate to death, which is a force of nature? That destructiveness in death. That's Shiva is the goddess that represents destruction, represents death. How do I relate to these forces of nature? That's for Hindus, since whatever is out there, this is the way we can relate. Okay, the other way is through what they call avatars. And avatars is like Vishnu and Krishna. They're personifications of God. Where devas are forces of nature, these are individuals. These are person kind of thing. As a Christian, that's not hard for us to get our head around, right? Because who would be a personification? Who would we see as a personification of God?
But isn't that worshiping idols?
As we would see Jesus as God. Okay. Yes, but they wouldn't believe that this idol is God, but rather this helps them focus. And actually with avatars, it's to remind them of these personifications of God, almost like incarnations of God, which Christians can kind of relate to. And when Jesus came, what did Jesus come to do? What was his purpose? If we take the death, the crucifixion and resurrection out, and even you could compare that, you could do it.
To fulfill prophecy.
Okay, when he was here on earth, what did he come to do for the people? What did he do for the people?
Well, he experienced humanity and
Okay.
he brought love from God.
Okay, he brought love for God. And how did he convey that love to God? How did he convey that to people?
Healing.
Okay, he healed. What else did he do?
Provided food.
He provided food. Good.
He taught them how to do it in his absence.
Taught them how to do it in the absence. Did he teach them right and wrong? Sure. Did he teach them what they should do to live better lives? To live a life that's godly life? Bang, that's what the avatars do in Hinduism. They are the personification of God to teach the people how to live as God would want them to live. That's what a Hindu believes the avatars do. The devas are those forces. They're not teaching people anything. They're the powers that we see all around us. But the avatars become the ones who come and teach us, how to live. Teach us what righteousness is. Teach us how to relate to one another. Now, with some of the devas, forces of nature, not all of them are good, right? Well, Shiva is a destroyer. Some are evil because evil is a reality around us too. And so not all of the devas are good. So a lot of them are more demonic than they are good.
So how can the avatar teach them how to live as God would want them to?
Okay. Now, what would be lessons? First, where would you find, if I am living in India now, and I am a Hindu, where might I find accounts of the lessons taught by the avatars? Where am I going to go to find?
They're holy.
I'm going to go to their holy places, right? You know, shrines and temples. What else am I going to do? I'm going to read the stories. I'm going to read the stories about these divine figures and the lessons that they came to teach in say, these sacred collections, the Vedas, the Upanishad, in these sacred writings are going to be stories about the lessons these avatars taught. Okay, so I'll be able to find their example there. So that's how they're going to learn. That's how they're communicating through these stories that are handed down and down and down.
And how many are there?
Thousands, thousands of stories. You know. Now, if they're teaching people how to live in a way that kind of conforms with the whatever forces out there, there's an ethic there also in Hinduism. So there's a right way of doing things and a wrong. There's a sense of righteousness in Hinduism. Okay, so now the question becomes then, if you've got devas and avatars, and the devas are the forces of nature that you would like to be able to control, right? And the avatars that are teaching us how to live our lives. Hindus believe in, and we use this word all the time, Hindus believe in karma, and believe in karma. And what is karma?
You get what you put out there.
You get what you...
Goes around, comes around.
What goes around comes around. Now, if I believe that, and you're right, that's exactly what karma is. You get what you pay for. What goes around comes around. What do I have to assume? If I believe that, what is an assumption I have to make in order
Somebody
to?
out there grading.
Oh, good. There's some kind of, now remember, the one out there is impersonal. There's no personal force out there. So we can't think, there's a person, there's a force that cares about you, like Christianity, Islam, Judaism. Hindus don't see that. But there must be a structure to the world. There must be certain rules, certain principles that establish this idea of karma, that what comes around, what goes around comes around, that you get what you deserve, that if you live a righteous life, you receive a reward, right? If you live a life that is bad, you end up suffering a little bit, right? All right. So karma is you get, now understand, and we'll talk about it in just a little bit, the goal, and this says a lot about Hinduism, the goal of the Hindu life is to escape life as we live it now. That's the goal, is to because this life here on earth, we suffer, we're hungry, we die, we decay, we break down. There's pain in this life, right? And so the goal is to be released from this life. And so karma not only is something that's paid up now, but has implications for the future. And that may be even more important. As I'm trying to escape this life and conform to that force, the force of nature, the force of the universe, I need to follow certain principles. Now, sasara is is the idea of a wheel. Karma is rewards and punishment. But if your goal is to escape this reality, Hindus view our reality as a wheel that goes around. It's constantly going around. In other words, his time for individuals isn't linear, doesn't have a beginning and an end. Instead, it's a circle. And that's part of the problem for Hindus of living in this world. We are constantly in this circle, that we can't escape it. We suffer, we die. For Hindus, we're reborn, we suffer, we die, we're reborn, we suffer, we die. That's a wheel. That's samsara. And to escape this wheel, you do work on these qualities, improving the qualities of your life. In Hindu society, used to have, and still maybe, you have a caste system. And if your karma is good in this life, in the next life, you're going to be better. If your karma, because you haven't aligned with, and we'll talk, that's dharma. Karma is your actions. Dharma is the structure. If those actions don't conform, then you may, in this circle, come back in a lower form. That's why on this little thing you've got a demon at the top, because you could come as you continue, you could end up suffering as a result of the life you live now. And so if my goal is, but that's a wheel. You're just constantly repeating things. But you got to get off. You want to get off that wheel. You want to get off that round. Debbie, you hate roundabouts. Because you sometimes get trapped on them, and you go around and around and around. That's the samsara. Is in a roundabout you can't escape. You just keep on going. Well, karma will allow you to escape that constant wheel. Okay? Now, that's as an individual then. No. As an individual then, I want to escape, find a way to escape the wheel. And I can do it through, now dharma is the structure. There are certain principles that will allow me to escape this constant repetition, that will improve my karma. What would be some things that would make my life better, that would make my life more holy and righteous? What do you think?
Helping other people.
Okay, helping other people. Bang. Yes. What else? What would be some things, some principles you would assume they would have if it's to make their lives better? What are some?
Studying the avatars.
Okay, you study the principles because the avatars gave you the example to follow. So you read those stories, right? And you emulate those principles that they had within their lives, they displayed in their lives. What else would you expect to be part of the dharma, the righteousness?
Praying to those gods.
Maybe praying to different gods. Okay? All of those are part of the sort of the rules, the principles in the universe that will improve your karma. Now, artha is livelihood. If one is righteous, it's becoming a more righteous person through prayer, through meditation, through learning, studying the examples that have been left. Artha is livelihood. Now, what's meant by livelihood?
Career,
Okay, good, career. And why does one have a career?
take up their time.
Why do the two ads in this room work
To provide.
all the
Sure.
time, and the two non-ads are retired?
I like that, knowing that.
Yeah.
Because we got off the wheel.
Yeah, we fell off the
We're
wheel.
on the wheel still.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're sort of like on that hamster wheel. You were just running on that
You
wheel.
sure are.
Why do we work?
To provide.
Okay,
for
we
families and-
work to provide. Now, I want to improve my life, so I am going to get my life morally straight. I'm going to get the Dharma right. I'm going to be righteous. I'm going to be a righteous person. How would your livelihood, the way you work, how would you expect that to work into your lifestyle that might improve your relationship or your ability to receive more? What would be some things you would be important in terms of your livelihood?
Well, if you were in an occupation that you were providing services to others.
Okay, so if I'm in an occupation that's providing services for others, that's good, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now if, let's say I am a preacher, let's say I work at AutoZone. AutoZone.
I'm sorry.
And we want, and I'm just taking that randomly. Let's say we're working at AutoZone and we want the AutoZone employee to have good karma. Now, the employee is going to work on the Dharma, going to work on the righteousness on his own. How could he improve his karma through working at AutoZone?
I don't know.
Tell me. How
Go
would
that
you do it?
extra step.
What's
Go
that?
the extra mile.
Go the extra step.
Okay,
yeah.
which would be involved doing like what? What would be going the extra mile?
Just helping out, if somebody needed something lifted up or whatever, just being there to help.
Okay, so could help somebody when they needed help?
Fix somebody's car for free.
Fix somebody's car for free? Give good advice? Be a hard worker? That's what and this is one of the things, so livelihood becomes important, and that gets really tricky when you start looking at a caste. Because if I believe I am born to do certain things,
Right.
then what I need to do is
That certain thing.
what's that?
That certain thing.
As well as I can do it, right?
Yep.
As well, to do it honestly, to do it with effort, to do it with diligence,
Integrity.
with integrity. All those things. We're not saying do something else, right? Because if I'm born to do this, I need to do this as well as I can.
Right.
If I'm born to do this, I don't look to do that. And that's why the caste was so important in India. People remained in the caste, which is okay because you're on this wheel, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I am doing this now, if I do it really, really well, after I die, the next time,
Didn't do anything.
I may be doing that. Something that I would really like to do. So that's what makes it really tricky. There's no, in Hinduism, since you believe in repetitive life, the impermanence of the soul, that you are the permanence of the soul, that you continue, transmigration of souls, you continue to come back to perfect your karma so that you can escape the wheel. You have no incentive to do it now, particularly by violating the way you're supposed to work. You don't do it. And that becomes one of the reasons so many other peoples conquered India, because you learn to be content. you work to be content with what you got, because next time it may be a little bigger. And if you're not content, next time
You come back as a gnat.
you're gonna come back as a gnat, a bug, a preacher, something like that, something off.
Well, if they get off the wheel, then what are they?
Well, you're never off the wheel.
Oh.
That's the thing. You are never off the wheel. You're constantly on it, whether you want to be or not. Therefore, the goal is to escape the wheel, but you only do that by sort of joining the Brahman, by entering this nebulous, vague force that's out there. But you stop suffering, the suffering, the frustration, the anger, all of that goes. Okay, another way is having to do with kama, which is sensual pleasure, which is part of human life. You're doing everything with integrity. That becomes a goal. You don't become exploitive. You don't become abusive. Everything is is positive, and the goal is the moksha, which is now liberation. And what would you think the liberation is? What are you liberated from? If you get your dharma right, your artha right, your kama right, what is the liberation? If you get all those other things right, what's going to be, from what are you looking to be liberated?
Of the lower rungs, I guess.
You're looking to be ultimately liberated from being on that stupid hamster wheel. That's what you want to be liberated from. Because that's something you do forever and ever and ever until you get all these other things right. Your karma is good. Now you can finally escape it. And that's the kind of liberation that you're looking at. Now,
They're a woman, they keep working
Well,
all
if
the
you
time.
escape it, then what? I don't get what
Okay.
you're saying. If you escape it, what do you do then?
when you escape, if you escape, being on the wheel means we have to deal with, regardless of how well our karma has improved, we still have to deal with pain. We still have to deal with limitation. We still have to deal ultimately with
Yeah.
death, separation, stress, anxiety, all those other things. Getting off the wheel, the liberation from the wheel, is when all of that's gone. For Muslims and Christians and Jews, for a lot of Muslims, Christians and Jews, this escape would be, what word would they use for this escape from death? Well, death becomes escape, but where do you go? After you die,
Yeah.
if you think about heaven, that's kind of what heaven, this is sort of the Hindu view of heaven, only it's not really a place, because you're not going somewhere. You are entering something. You are becoming part of something greater. It's not personal. You just finally escaped what your life here on earth, this constant repetition. You finally freed yourself from it.
And live out in the stars.
What's that?
They're gonna live out in the stars.
You go out and you live in the stars. That's right. You become, what do you become? You become a drop of water in the ocean. You become a drop of water in the ocean. You become one with all. That becomes the goal. You're not having to fight anymore. That's what Hindus believe. That becomes the goal in their life, is to escape, right? Now, there are ways to do that. All of those, the livelihood and the righteousness and the sensuality and the liberation, all of those are parts of life that we want to improve. Now, if we want to find out how to improve them, we can go through the 4 paths of yoga. Now, understand, where I'm presenting it like every Hindu believes this. Hindus can believe almost anything they want. The goal is to escape this mortal toil. Different teachers in Hindu have different ideas of how you do that. You know, some of them very specific, some of them very vague. All of them will tend to look at these 4 ways. You got to get your actions right. You got to get your devotion right. And what does devotion mean?
I don't know, it can mean commitment, I
Yeah,
guess.
commitment, dedication. You got to get your meditation. You can do it through meditation. That's part of it. A way to improve your karma. Become one, sort of following the principles of the universe. And you become wiser. All of these are ways that you can improve your chances of escaping this wheel in which we're all on. Okay, rituals. The only one in festivals. The one I want to focus on a little bit is the one we saw right at the beginning, because that's the Ganges. Now, not all Hindus, but some Hindus believe that it's important to bathe in the Ganges River. That becomes a place where you can, like a baptism, where you can wash away sins. But since we commit sins every day, how often do you need to bathe in the Ganges?
Every day.
Every day. You know, ideally,
Might as well just
it would
stay
be
in.
bathing.
That's what I
What's
think.
that?
I say might as well just stay in there.
Just might as well, we get pruny if you stay there. What makes bathing in the Ganges kind of tricky is the Ganges is really, really,
Polluted.
yeah. So there are some real health issues. But for a lot of Hindus, this is part of their beliefs. This is again a way to improve their karma. How do I get my karma better?
If you
You
can
know.
survive the dump, then
Yes, if you can, yeah, that's right. All right. Now, ahimsa, again, we're talking about improving our karma. Ahimsa is doing good deeds, or that's better. It's sort of accepting your life as it is, not to be violent, sort of radical peace. Passive resistance, like Gandhi. You know, that you don't, if you resist, you don't do it with violence. You have respect for other human beings. That will improve your karma. That's putting you in line with the principles of the universe. Okay? Something else related to it, if you're going to treat other people kindly, because that's important, you also need to do what?
be kind to animals.
Be kind to animals. Be kind to animals. Now, you know, a lot of in the West, we might, people say, well, they're kind to animals because reincarnation could come back as an animal. That's not why they're kind to animals. That's not why they often don't eat meat, or they don't eat cows, because cows are sacred. They don't do that not because they're afraid they're going to be eating Uncle Phil, who was a stinker and died. They don't do it because they're showing respect. And if I show respect for other life, then I'm improving my karma. I'm moving to the place I want to be. I'm looking at escaping the wheel that I'm on. So part of that is showing respect to animals, showing respect to people, being peaceful, showing respect to animals. Vegetarianism is a big deal Hindus, because it's improving the life of those girls by being kind to the cow. What's really interesting is how Hindus relate to other religions. Now, based on, and I know I'm dumping a whole religion on you. You have any questions about Hindu beliefs?
My girlfriend, her son-in-law's from Nepal, and
Oh, okay.
when her daughter and him got married, they got married 3 times, in the backyard in the church, and then 2 years later went to India. And it was,
Yeah.
But with their baby and stuff, she says, oh, it's crazy. You go in and you've got to burn the sage all around to get all the evil spirits out of the room.
Mhm.
And she's like, that's just too much. She says, yeah, she comes to my house and she burns her sage as she goes around, and but she says that's the way they believe is
Right.
that, so.
And based on what I was just sharing with you, why would they do that? Why is that a logical? See, one of the things with religions that I love is it's an internal logic to them all.
Mm-hmm.
If you can kind of get into it, there's a reason. It's not, well, we do it, or I don't know why we do it. We just do it. There's a reason behind it. Why would keeping away demons or bad forces, why would that be important based on what we've talked about Hindus believing?
Put you at a higher level.
Oh yeah, that's part of that devotion as a way to improve your karma. Because those demonic forces are going to try to distract you from, kind of the right path.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to keep them away. They're going to damage you. One of the things that becomes interesting as I've talked to Hindus is it is so focused on the individual, on me. Because I'm improving. Now I may help you, but my help for you is only to ultimately,
Self-serve you.
help me. I'm helping you because that's going to improve my karma. I'm not doing it as a self-sacrifice, which is what Jesus talked about. Jesus talks about sacrificing yourself, denying yourself. Hinduism is not about denying yourself. It's not about indulging yourself in sensuality, but it is certainly about focusing on you. One might look at Christianity and say it is not. That's the opposite. It's not focusing on you. It's focusing on the other. It's focusing on the other. And I think that's a fundamental difference. Why Hinduism is kind of a challenge for Christians. But as a Hindu, they can have good relationships with a lot of religions from the Hindu side. Because it doesn't matter what you believe. What matters is how you're improving your life. If being a Christian improves your karma, then what should you do? If you believe Jesus Christ is the incarnation of God, Son of God, and He taught us to love our neighbors and love God and neighbor, you know something? If I do it, my karma is going to be better. And I'm working to escape the wheel. So Hindus have this view of religion that sort of encompasses them all. Because you can be almost anything as long as you're improving. Now next week we'll talk about Buddhism, and Buddhism is going to take it another step, even further. But Hinduism, it's not like you've got to believe in certain gods. They don't care. Hindu doesn't care if you don't worship the Hindu gods of the story, of the legends. You do whatever you need to do to improve your life. And a famous Hindu is Julia Roberts.
I thought she was a Christian Scientist.
No.
Oh.
No. But you could be a Hindu Christian Scientist.
Right.
You could do that. Okay. Any questions about Hinduism?
Do they seem to think that they have any realization of what they've been before, or what they're gonna be, or where they are on the wheel.
Yeah. Now, whether they have a perception of where they've been and where they're going, they all hope they're going to be higher, move higher. But a good Hindu would have a strong sense of where they are, because they could tell by the way they live in their lives. If their livelihood is right, if their righteousness is right, if they've got a control over their passions, so they're not using it to be exploited. If that's something that I sense that I'm able to do, I'm taking control of my life. Because Hinduism, this is radical free will. This is really free will, because you are completely free to make these choices. And the choice is heavy. There's no God out there that's going to love you anyway. If you screw up, you're going to pay the consequences. If you achieve, you're going to pay the consequences. So all of this is radical free will. So I think you have a sense. And if you're a Hindu that believes in the caste system, and not all of them do, which stratifies society, you know by the class you're in. Remember when Maggie was younger, she said she wanted to be a Hindu after they looked at her little in class? She did. She said she wanted to be a Hindu because I'm a minister, and sort of the priestly class is a higher class. That she liked that. She thought that was pretty good, to be in this higher caste. A Brahmin. Brahmins are the higher caste. So she thought that was a pretty good deal. She outgrew it. Although she may be a Hindu now, I don't know.
And why do the ladies have that red dot on their forehead?
I don't know. I don't know. Anything else? Well, then let's have a word of prayer, and next week we'll talk about Buddhism. And Buddhism will be a little easier than Hinduism, because it's more structured. Lord God, thank you so much for guiding us through this. Not only help us to use these ideas, not just to understand how we can relate to others, which is pretty important, but there are nuggets of truth in here. Jesus challenged us to live better lives, to be more moral people, to love God and to love our neighbors. I mean, this is the same challenge here. So help us to appreciate not just the differences we have, but also the similarities. And if there's something in Hinduism that might enable us to be better Christians, help us to have the courage to claim it. In the name of Christ we pray, amen.